Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew on the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I am honored to have Steve Thomson with me. Steve is the founder of Happy Life Wood, and his story is absolutely fascinating. I think one of the biggest takeaways I had was sometimes you just have to be willing to step into a passion and to find out that it is even a passion and then see where it can take you. So, Steve, thanks so much for being on today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
So to
Appreciate
kick off, yeah. So to kick off your story, you grew up in New York. Talk a little bit about your family dynamic, and were there any kind of life lessons that were important for you in your younger years that parents or people around you were able to teach you?
Yeah, I grew up in a small town in upstate New York. Graduating class of I think 100, so very small, tight knit community. Um, come from a family of five. I have two siblings. Very, very much into sports from a very young age. I played basketball, soccer, and baseball. And my dad was a big athlete, teacher. Far back as I can remember, it was all about sports.
Yeah.
And so that, I think that taught me, and I think sports really gives you, a lot of different, disciplines in terms of character and the way you conduct yourself. So, I look back and, being captains on my teams or, just the structure and discipline that sports have, I think, gave me a good, along with, a really good upbringing by my parents, just a good foundation to be successul.
Yeah.
So, also at a very young age, I knew I liked to draw. And
Mm.
so I had that kind of that sports art kind of mixture, but back then, art wasn't cool,
Yeah.
and so it was just kind of a side thing for me. When I would get bored, I would draw, and my parents recognized that I had a little bit of talent. And as I got older, I mean, I knew obviously sports wasn't gonna, I wasn't gonna make a career out of that. So they kind of pushed me in the direction of art. And
Cool.
I did a lot throughout my high school years in different things, and then attended college where I got a 4-year degree in graphic design. In the beginning, I really wanted to pursue a fine arts degree and do illustration, because that's what I really love to do, is draw. But
Yeah.
I was kind of led in a direction that tough to get jobs, drawing and
Yeah.
painting, and so graphic design was a little bit more practical in terms of a career. So yeah, it's I attribute a good upbringing, great parents and family structure to then kind of applying that myself to my own family.
Absolutely. So to tie into that, so like you said, hey, art's a passion of yours and a skill that you're developing. And so because you don't go into the drawing world, you go into the marketing, which there's a overlap there, and you kind of enter into that from a corporate standpoint. So talk a little bit about getting started in, the corporate world and working jobs like that in the marketing.
Yeah, so graphic design is what I was trained in, and again, I could draw, but at the end of the day, it's just having that I think I possess that enabled me to kind of adapt to different types of roles within the art realm. And so my first job was as a graphic designer at a big company. Went through the motions, couple promotions, and I knew just from observing the corporate structure and the way things work, that if I could get up into, if I could get more into marketing and that management aspect, I could make more money, which is, you're raising a young family. It's all about trying to provide, and so I kind of went that route, and first started out as a director of advertising in in telecommunications, and then moved to more of the retail product type business, where I was director of marketing, and really, I enjoyed it, but my first love is always to be hands on,
Yeah.
and either drawing or creating, making. So while it was, I enjoyed the time in those roles. To me, it wasn't as satisfying as hands-on stuff.
Yeah. Well, when you say that, something that makes me think about is, for me, like my friends give me a hard time. I still mow my own yard. I don't hire anyone to do it. And they go, "Why do you mow your own yard?" I go, "Because there's something that after 40 minutes, I can go out there and see crisp lines and I can see a project done." There's that instant gratification of having completed something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when I was in my more the management type roles, I always kept my foot a little bit in the design
Yeah.
role as well. Like, I still try to be creative and do some design work, because yeah, like you said, at the end of the day, while you're being creative mentally and strategically, there's just something to be said for finishing a design or a
Yeah.
project. And I agree totally. I mow my own lawn too. It's therapeutic. And
Yeah.
that really kind of segues into, why I started all of this.
Yes. So to tie into that, you've been working in the kind of corporate setting for about 25 years, and one day you decide that, hey, maybe there's a do-it-yourself project with wood that you could, attempt. And so talk a little bit about that first do-it-yourself project and getting started doing a little bit of woodworking there.
Yeah, I think I was building some shelves, some in my garage, some storage shelves, and it's the first thing that I said, I'm gonna try this. So I did all the research. I looked at YouTube videos. I got plans, and little did I know, because I knew nothing about woodworking, that you need a bunch of different tools. So it's like, oh, I need a circular saw. Oh, I need a drill, a drill gun. I need a level. I need all these different things. So I was like at the Home Depot or whatever every day, just
Yeah.
getting new tools, and more the more I would do it, I just fell in love with the whole process, of working with my hands, working with the tools, learning new tools and techniques. It was so therapeutic to me that I would just literally get lost in the projects. And I would be
Yeah.
sitting at my desk at work thinking about the project I had going on home. I just couldn't wait to get home. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd come through the door, I'd change my clothes, I'd go out to the garage, and just start right in, and come in for dinner, and then back out, and then sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning. It was just so satisfying.
Yeah. So as you start doing some practical projects, your son is a big shoe guy, and so you were looking at the shoe idea one day, and you said, "Well, I bet I could bring these to life a little bit and make some 3D out of it." So talk a little bit about venturing more into the artistic side of artwork instead of the more practical use part of it.
Yeah, in the beginning, it was hobby stuff. It was building things that were more practical. I even started out, really, I was finding used pallets, breaking them down and using the wood from the pallets, making different things. And So I had gotten to the point where, I'd built, big farm tables, and I built an armoire, coffee tables, a bunch of things, and was really starting to get, decent at traditional woodworking. But every project I would do, I was always looking for some type of a creative spin to put on it.
Mm.
At the end of the day, I wanted to feel like I had, my own personal touch on it, and that it was different than just plans that I had found on the internet.
Yeah.
It's just the way I am, and whatever I do, I like to make it different and stand out. And so, that's when, I thought it was my son's birthday. He and I are both sneaker guys. I'm guilty of creating, a sneakerhead out of him from a young age. And so I chose his favorite, black cement, Jordan black cement threes. And I made a template on my computer, and I thought, I could cut these different pieces out on a scroll saw, because I had bought a scroll saw, and I could put them together like a puzzle, and I could, use the colors in the wood that I had scraps laying around here to represent the colors in the piece.
Yeah.
So I set out to do that. I made my template, started cutting the pieces. I started putting them together, and I had initially thought that I would just put them together and it would just be a piece of art, a kind of a flat piece of art,
Yeah.
and I started to like sand and round over some of the edges and corners, and I was looking at it and I'm like, wow, I think I can make this thing look real. It's starting to take on a realness.
Yeah.
So I just kept going with it, and I think I bought a couple more tools that I needed to, because I was just doing everything with just sandpaper and maybe a chisel or something. So I'm like, wow, if I bought like one of those Dremels, I got into that, and I found that there's like all these different, you know little burrs and attachments that you can really get pretty detailed with things.
Yeah.
So I started, with just a regular Dremel tool. I started like carving, and it it was it just felt really natural, almost felt,
Mm.
and like I said, as I got further and further into it, I remember, I'll always remember this moment where I had it sitting up against the wall, and I walked into my shop and I looked at it, and I'm like, wow, that thing's starting to look real, and
Yeah.
I said, I'm gonna continue to do this. So I got it done. I gave it to my son, and he was just like, wow, this is awesome. And he was just blown away. He loved it. And as I showed different people at work or wherever, the reaction I got was just always wow.
Yeah.
And so then, I'm like, I want to do another piece. My son said, Dad, you're onto something here. You got to continue down this path. So I did do a portrait. I said, I'm going to challenge myself, and I'm going to do a portrait. And it was fairly, recent that Kobe had passed away. And I said, I'm going to do a piece of Kobe. So I did it, or I started to do it. I got my template. I started cutting pieces, and then I started carving and shaping. And I was developing my process at the time and how I did things. So I really took my time, and there was a lot of starts and stops and redos. And it took me probably a good 4 to 6 months, because I was
Yeah.
working on it during my off, my free time.
Yeah.
And I finished it up, and again, I got even a bigger reaction from people. And so when it was all said and done, my a buddy of mine said, wow, that's amazing. Would you mind if I shared it on Instagram? I said, no, I don't care. At the time, I didn't have a presence on Instagram at all.
Yeah.
So and it was just a personal piece that I had done. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I'm definitely going to keep it and hang it in my office or whatever. So he puts it up, and a little while later, he I can't remember if he texted me or called me and said, "You're not going to believe this, but Pau Gasol just shared that on his Instagram story." And I'm like, "Whoa, that's kind of cool." So
Yeah.
then he calls me a little while later. He says, "You're really not going to believe this. He just DM'd me and wants to know how he can purchase the piece." Next thing you know, I'm on a Zoom call with Pau Gasol and his business manager, and we're negotiating a price on this piece of art, which I've never sold a piece of art in my life.
Yeah.
I just I knew the all the blood, sweat, and tears and the love that I put into it, and I kind of knew that about what I wanted, and we came to a mutual agreement that I think we were both happy with. And at the end of the day, he shared it on his Instagram page, actually an actual post, and it just blew up. And that's where everything started. And
Yes.
so I mean, I attribute a lot of my you know success and just me getting a start to Pau Gasol. It was just amazing, the feeling of it really humbled me. I mean, just the comments that people were making on his page. So at that time, it was right at that time, it was COVID, and
Yeah.
I got laid off from my job due to COVID.
Yeah.
And my son said to me, "Dad, you're you're doing this full time, and I'm going to help you," because he was in the social media field in his
Yeah.
his job. So he said, "We're going to do this." So he set up an Instagram page and a TikTok. And in the beginning, it was difficult because I was just so used to being in my zone and just working away on these projects, because it's so intensive labor wise.
Right.
And so he would be like, "Dad, you got to capture this, you got to capture that." I'm like, I don't want to do. I'd have to like step away from what I'm doing, set up a tripod, set up a camera, and I just wasn't. It was just not about it. And
Yep.
then I started to realize that if I want to do this, I've got to get eyes on it. And I realized then, and he made me realize how critical it was to capture what I was doing, capture it well. He's unbelievable with his eye and his creativity when it comes to social posts and just the algorithm and everything that goes along with it. And that's kind of that really COVID. Yeah, to a lot of people it was incredibly tough, but to me it was a blessing. It just really, it gave me the opportunity to say, not sit there and contemplate, should I do it, should I not. It gave me the ability to just jump in it and just do it and see what happened. And we haven't looked back since. It's just been a wild ride.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things I want to debrief from there, and we'll start with the last part and work our way back. But you said it right there. Not discrediting anything with COVID. Tough times, for a lot of people, whether it's health, whether it's financial, all of that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
for you, the tough thing happened, right? You got laid off from the job of a career that you'd been doing for 25 years. And now you're put in this position of like, well, all right, it's not an ideal time to try and look for a job. A lot of businesses aren't out here like,
Right,
exponentially looking for help.
right.
But this might be the catalyst and like the break that I needed to have something happen. And I think for so many people, a bad thing happens and it causes us to get down and not be able to see out in front of us like what opportunity this creates. But for
Right.
you, it was a bad thing, but it created all this free time that, hey, now I can explore this realm that's become a really big passion. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's crazy because I was reaching a point in my career where I was getting burned out, and I was starting to, you know, get my attitude towards corporate, life was starting to get not the greatest. And, so it was perfect timing, the transition was just amazing. It just felt so natural for me to just transition into this. And, I really, I look at it still to this day as a blessing, and something that, I feel was meant to be. And I think I was telling you before, but I was never a real big believer in, if it's meant to be type of a thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just every single thing fell into place. And I feel so fortunate that I can come out to my shop every single day, turn on the lights and just do what I love.
Yeah.
It's just, and I literally feel like I'm living my dream. And I just feel so fortunate, because there's not a lot of people that can say that. And it's come late in my career, my life, whatever. But and I could say, God, I wish I had done the time ago. But I don't look at it that way. I look at it, this has given me something, at this age. I mean, I feel like I'm retired, and I work
Yeah.
17 hours a day.
Right.
I literally feel I don't have to, go by, I don't have to follow by anybody's rules or time schedule. I can, do my own thing, on my own time. And just that, along with just the unbelievable people that I've met and come into contact with, is amazing.
I love it. So to tie into that, you go, I wish it could have happened maybe earlier, right? But it did happen at the right timing. But the other thing that I want to, highlight, a lot of people listening right now are like, Phil, why the heck are we talking about woodworking? Like, I don't know that that's a passion of mine. But I think the principle is unanimously the same. And that is, it's so helpful and beneficial to have something outside of work that you enjoy doing, right? And even if that is just something that never turns into a business, it's just something that you enjoy doing. It's a getaway, it's a stress reliever. I mean, whatever it is, I think there's a lot of power in that. But it wasn't just something that you picked up that you knew how to do already. I mean, you were learning a completely new skill, and you had to, like you said, I had messed up a lot, right? Like, there's a lot of trial and error and, trial by fire. So talk about
Yeah.
just being willing to learn a new skill and being willing to put in the time to like master a craft of something that really prior to, what, 5, 6 years ago, you probably hadn't really spent much time doing in your life.
No, I had never, I really, had not, I, I was no tools around here, and that I even knew how to use. But I think I was lucky in that I happened to choose something that, I kind of naturally um, was able to pick up. If I would have chosen something else, maybe it wouldn't have been, and maybe I wouldn't have, enjoyed it as much, and enjoyed, the success that I've enjoyed with this. But it was, like I said, it just felt natural. And it was like, what's the next thing? It's like, what am I doing next? What am I going to do next? And it almost became an addiction for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember so many nights just laying there in bed and thinking of, different things, and being on my phone looking up YouTube videos. It was just like this obsession to, be good at it, and
Yep.
following other, woodworkers or makers or creative people on Instagram, and just being like, I want to be at that level, and I want to, that someday I want to be that person, and it's been amazing. I was able to just a few months ago represented a company that sells the burrs that I used to carve, I was able to attend a a conference, a trade show with them, representing their company. It's called Workbench Con. So, and it's really geared towards social media and how to build your business, woodworking makers, things like that. And so I was able to actually go there and be amongst, the people that I looked up to, when I started, and say, I'm one of these guys now.
Yeah.
I've gotten to the point now where my work's out there, and I've done work for other artists that I really respected and idolized. And it was just a real kind of full circle moment for me, being at that show and having people come up to me and say, wow, I love your work. And it's like, very humbling, very
Yeah.
humbling.
So earlier you had mentioned, Pau Gasol was kind of the first person to get a grasp, but since then you've done some other NBA projects, and I know Duncan Robinson and PJ Tucker, you've been able to do pieces for them. So talk a little bit about how those connections came to be, and the pieces that you created on their behalf.
Yeah. Uh, it's the power of social media is just never in my wildest dreams that I realized the reach and the magnitude of what it could actually do for somebody. And
Yeah.
my first, I'll even talk about a couple other projects with
Yeah.
people uh, that really helped me in growing my business and my art. I think the first real project that kind of put me on the map, if you will, was doing a job for Matt Halfhill at Nice Kicks. He's the CEO of Nice Kicks. Now, Nice Kicks is, they're a kind of a sneaker
Yeah.
head, media outlet, and they've been around since, we got a DM from Matt Halfhill, and my son said, "Oh my God!" He goes, "You're not gonna believe this is unbelievable." He goes, "I remember being in seventh grade and watching every single Nice Kicks video, and
Yeah.
I remember even emailing Matt Halfhill at one point, just asking him some questions." And so it was really cool, not only for me, but to see him be able to enjoy some kind of cool moments, in
Yeah.
what we were doing. So Matt said, I'd like you to create a piece for me. And I was really honored. He's still a legend in the sneaker world. And so we worked together, and we created a piece that kind of embodies all of his favorite sneakers and what they meant to him in terms of his business and how he's taken that along the way. And it came out great. We actually, one of the things that we like to do is we like to actually hand deliver the
Mm.
art and capture that moment, because that's one of my favorite parts. Is I work so hard, and I you know I do everything I can to make this thing the best that it can be. And I just, my favorite part is seeing the reaction, of
Yes.
the person I'm doing it for, because I know that it means so much to them. It's really special. And that his reaction is, I think, probably the best one that I've ever gotten. We ended up capturing that moment. We posted it, and that's the first video that went viral
Yeah.
for me, and really, really, really is the first video that introduced me to the sneaker world.
Mm.
And that has been amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, I've gotten to talk to and connect with some of the biggest people in the game. I've been on a Zoom call with Tinker Hatfield. Had conversations with PJ Tucker. He's like the
Yeah.
biggest sneakerhead in the world. And people from the Jordan brand, people from the Nike brand we actually got to go to the Nike campus because I did a piece for them, actually two pieces. And so yeah, I mean, it's really, really cool to work with people like Matt, like Steve Butcher, one of the top tattoo artists in the world, who reached out to me. And when that DM came through, I was just like, this is probably my biggest honor right here, because it's another artist
Yes.
that's recognizing my work. And that really is, to me, like the pinnacle of how you perceive your work. Just because as artists, we're always our worst critics. We're emotional. We're all that stuff. And you get down on yourself, whatever. But to get accolades from someone who is all at a a very high level in what they do is amazing. And then just to work with people that are real, and that want to talk and collaborate on the work, and
Yeah.
are open to, hey, let's meet up, and let's do this in person, not just wrap it up and ship it off.
Yep.
And Duncan was absolutely unbelievable. I mean, the guy is just an elite human being. I mean,
Mm.
just in every aspect of what he does, from his his playing to his the way he carries himself on the court and off the court. And he said, yeah, come on out, let's do it up. You can stay at my place. And it was just, you wouldn't expect that from an NBA player.
Right.
And it was funny though. It was funny though, because when we made contact with him, he was, at first he was like, yeah, let's do a piece. And then he said, on second thought, let's do, because I think we had said, would love to get in front of PJ Tucker. And he said, you know what, let's do this, a piece for him. And actually, I'm going to gift it to him, because he's always busting on me, because he sets so many screens for me, and he says I owe him something. So he goes, let's do that. He goes, so
Oh, cool.
we found out what his favorite sneaker was, and we worked on it. And then we went out to Miami and did the reveal, and it was priceless, man. It was his
Yes.
reaction. I was just in another zone. It was just so amazing. But he was also so down to earth and so cool about everything. But like I said, to work with people like that, who you know you know actually are gracious and respect your work, and are real, is really, there's a lot to be, and it may be for somebody really notable or whatever. But if it's just purely transactional, it's cold. And sometimes as an artist, it's like, do I really want to do this type of work? Because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, I want people to appreciate my work.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, those are, I've got some really, really exciting stuff coming up that I'm so excited about. And we just keep setting the goal higher and higher for ourselves, and have been lucky enough. And but I owe so much of it to my son. Us together, we work as a great team. And he's so good at what he does. But it's unbelievable what it's done for us. I mean, he was living in Denver, and I'm
Yeah.
in upstate New York. And as a parent, that's tough when your child moves the other side of the country. But
Right.
it gave us this an even much tighter bond, even with
Mm.
the distance. And we're on the phone constantly with each other. And and just figure out what's our next move, who we going to meet with, let's take these calls.
Yeah.
And it's been, it is the best thing of anything else that's come out of this, has been that connection that he and I have been able to have throughout this.
I love it. Now, to describe your art to somebody that hasn't seen it yet, by the way, go check out the social media page because you can see it. But to describe the art is hard for somebody to understand. If you're watching right now, you can see there's a piece done of Nipsey Hussle. If you're just listening, I encourage you to go check out the YouTube channel. You can see it. But when you look at this, you're like, man, that kind of looks like a painting, or, like a really well drawn something. And the reality is that's probably what, 500, 600 pieces of wood. So talk a
Yeah,
little bit about the pure attention to detail that you have going on these pieces that you work on.
yeah, it's I think, as I've gotten better and better and evolved in this craft, which to my knowledge, there's nobody else out there that does it quite the way I do. Now
Yeah.
there is there's a woodworking process that's called intarsia, and that is, the art of taking natural pieces of wood, different species, cutting them out and putting them together, which is basically what I do. But I kind of took it to another level, to where I actually carve it as one unit to look and flow as a real thing, and appear three-dimensional. It's not fully three-dimensional, but it's perspectively
Yeah.
it's three-dimensional. It's got depth to it. Whereas, traditional intarsia isn't as it doesn't have as much depth to it, and
Yeah.
it's, they kind of round the corners and kind of put the pieces together. But and it's funny, a funny story. When I first did my first piece, I was thinking, God, is anybody else doing this out there? I have to, so I Googled just like wood art,
Yeah.
wood portraits or whatever, and this intarsia thing came up, and I looked at it and I was like, wow, that's kind of what I'm doing. Like, I didn't even know something like this existed. And
Yeah.
so, it's just weird. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, as far as this goes, and my pieces now, my goal is to try and to get as much detail as I possibly can
Yeah.
in a subject matter, to where it almost real. And like I said, I mean, my work's evolved over time, but yeah, it's just, it's finding the right woods. I'm lucky enough to have a source here locally where I can get most of my exotic woods. But there's times when I need certain colors or whatever that I'll order it online.
Yeah.
So it's just finding those woods, getting a good, and that's where my graphic design background comes in,
Yeah.
I'm able to create and translate a photograph to a more graphically um, uh, looking, piece, that I can then, because you have to take a photograph and you have to kind of break it down into different shapes, because that's the way you're gonna, put your piece together. So, luckily I had that skill in terms of, using Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop to, manipulate an image to where I could then use it as a template.
Yeah.
And so once that's done, then I just start cutting my pieces, and I've developed a way to, get really detailed, where, some people are like, wow, how do you fit together those little tiny pieces? Well, I've developed a way to do that, that enables me to get that detailed. And, a lot of times people will say, well, that's, you did that on a CNC machine, didn't you? And, a computer generated machine that cuts the pieces. I'm like, no, I cut them all with a scroll saw by hand,
Yeah.
and so it's like you said, a lot of people will think it's a painting, or a CNC'd, or so in the beginning, it was getting, it was a little frustrating in the first year, because we were doing these videos and people, it was getting decent, engagement and
Yeah.
interaction. People were like, oh, that's really cool, but we knew that it was better than that. We knew
Yeah.
that, there was more of a wow factor to it. And that's when we said, we need to educate
Mm,
the people on what this art is, because they didn't understand it. They just
right.
didn't, and they still don't a lot of times.
Yeah.
So that's when I started doing the repetitive videos where I say, what you're about to see is not painted or stained. And then I
Right.
describe the process a little bit, how many pieces there are, and what, the different woods are. And that's when that formula just changed the game for us. It changed our whole business. And we had 5, 6 videos hit over 5 million views. And
Yeah.
it's, yeah, so that's, I mean, that was the biggest thing, is educating people, because they just didn't understand what it was.
Yeah. Well, and so a concept that I took just out of that, and I think ties into so many aspects of life, using it in your instance, what you said here, what I heard you say was, what I do today is much more detailed than what I first did. And I think, that that's so true in like a progression of life. You almost look back, 5 years ago and you're like, I can't believe I thought that was good. But the reality is at the time it was the best you could have
Yeah,
done
yeah,
with the skill set and the
yeah,
repetition or the practice you had. Now today you
yeah,
look back and you're like, oh man, I wouldn't have let that even get seen by people. But at the time it was the best you could do. And in life, I think that's a
yeah,
in life, I think that's a true statement too, where sometimes people look back or reflect on decisions they made years ago and they say, man, why did I make that decision? And it was like, well, it was probably the best decision that you could have made with the knowledge and the experience
yeah,
that you'd had at that point. Now, given
yeah,
5 more years of life, you probably wouldn't have made that same choice. So talk a little bit
yeah.
about, that for you, just kind of reflecting and just that consistent progress and how much better you are today, but not being ashamed of the old work. It's just like that was the best I did then, but I use that as a platform to get better today.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to kind of reference what you were saying, in life, it kind of mirrors, in life, you know, we evolve as human
Yeah.
beings, right? And I think a lot of times we evolve just from life lessons.
Yeah.
We it's repetition. Once you do something so many times, you're gonna get better each time you do it. And I
Yeah.
think that, in life, we make a bad decision, and we don't do that again. The next time we make, a better one or the right one. And it's the same really is this, is it's just repetition, and it's just, doing it over and over and over and over again. It helps to have, the wherewithal, and uh, uh, I guess a natural ability to adapt and get better.
Yeah.
But I think with anybody, it's, if you do it enough and you set your mind to it and you're passionate about it, there's really nothing that you can't do. And I think that's been my mindset all along, is, every piece that I do, my goal is to have it, make it better than the last one.
Yeah.
I That's, that is really big for me. If I don't achieve that, then I'm not satisfied. And I'll work until I get it there. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the beauty, in what I do, is that, most of the time, clients or customers are really, really understanding on, lead times, and they know
Yeah.
that what I do takes a long time. So
Yep.
they have to, right out of the gate, they have to be, willing to wait, because it's months, or a long time to finish one of these things. And it, like I said, I really don't have, a dead stop most of the time. So like I said, if it's not where I want it to be, then I'll I'll redo it. I can't, it's just not in me to put something out there that's not my absolute best work. So
Yeah.
that you're absolutely correct when you say, like when I put the Kobe piece out, I was like, this is the best I can do. I put everything I have into this thing. And like you said, after years of evolving and learning and getting better, I look back at that piece and I'm like, that's not even close to, what I do now.
Right.
So it's sometimes you're almost like cringe a little bit. You're like, oh man, look at those eyes. Like because I've been able to um, develop different techniques that enable me to get more detailed.
Yeah, I love it. Now, the other thing that I've thought is really neat in what you're doing is, one, you've been able to turn this into your career now, right? And your job. But two, you've been able to give back in two ways. One, you're doing important pieces for important people, right? Powell ended up giving that piece to Vanessa, right? And so that's a very sentimental piece. But the second is art that you've done has been able to be donated and auctioned off for, I mean, tens of thousands of dollars, which once again is doing great for whatever philanthropic or charitable organization that goes to. So talk a little bit about that aspect of what you're able to do and how you're helping others there too.
Yeah, when I first initially connected with somebody at Nike, uh, they reached out and they said, love your work, would love to try and figure out something, to work on. And at some point, he came back and he said, listen, I'm part of a team at Nike that works on a charity for the local children's hospital, the
Mhm.
Dornbecker Children's Hospital. And what that is we work with children that are part of that hospital and have different ailments or whatever. And there's I think there's like 7 or 8 of them that actually work with people at Nike to produce a sneaker that they basically designed with the designers at Nike. And when I heard that, well, first of all, I hadn't heard about it, but my son had said, "Oh my God, Dornbecker, those are like really sought after sneakers because of they're one of ones basically when they create them. They're not they're very limited and it's for such a great cause." And I was like, wow, this would be an absolute just unbelievable project to work on.
Yeah.
I was so it kind of went back and forth, and my guy at Nike was really able to pull some strings and make it happen. And it's probably my one of my top two experiences doing what I do is being able to be there at this charity event and at the auction where they auction the piece off. Now what they do is they bring the kids in, and then the kids bring their sneakers that they designed with their designer
Yeah.
from Nike, and they auction off that first pair. And other than those 7 or 8 sneakers that were auctioned off at that event, my artwork, which was basically each of those sneakers
Wow.
depicted in wood. Um, my piece was the only other thing that was auctioned off besides the sneakers at that charity event. And to see how people came together for this charity, for this great cause, was just amazing and something I'll never forget. It was really a milestone kind of high moment for me.
I love it. I love it. Well, Steve, I want to say thanks so much for coming on, sharing your story and your journey. And, I'm so excited to continue to watch it. And I can't wait to do this in 3 years when you've done even more projects and continue to grow. And we'll look and we'll be like, man, you remember when we thought that Nipsey piece was amazing? It was like, well, it was amazing, but it's even better now. And all the things we're going to be doing then.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage everyone listening, go check out the Instagram page. And is the same handle on TikTok, the Happy Life Wood?
Yep, it's Happy Life Wood at Happy Life Wood. Yep,
At
and
Happy Life
the
Wood.
website is www.happylifewood.com. And thank you so much for having me on. And it's the whole telling the story. I've done it so many times now, and it's a constant reminder of how fortunate I am and how blessed I am, telling other people that, and hopefully giving a little hope to some people that are looking to maybe jump out of their career and do something that they're passionate about. That's one of the things that to me is really important, is spreading positivity, and I try to do that through my social media as well.
I love it. Well, thanks so much, Steve.
Thank you, really appreciate it.